What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for being here. We're going to do a primer on some of the early off-season decisions the Twins have to make. So, World Series has started up, pretty crazy game one. After the World Series ends, stuff really starts to roll in terms of the offseason. No, you're not going to see a lot of free agent signings early. No, you're not going to see trades early like when you can. But there are other decisions that the Twins are going to have to make that are going to have a pretty big imprint on their overall offseason. So I've got a timeline here up showing you the important dates. I'm not going to read through all those. You can read those on the screen while I'm talking. But kind of what I want to introduce this conversation is the Twins' 40-man roster situation. They have more guys than they have spots on the 40-man roster right now due to the 60-day injured list. We'll get to that in a sec. And even though I do think it's really hard for us as Twins fans to get very optimistic about them doing anything on the free agent market, given their payroll limitations that they still have this year, reportedly, unfortunately, the payroll is not expected to go up from where it was last season. And with a lot of guys getting raises, that doesn't really leave any money to spend on free agency. A lot of stuff can change. We'll see how it all unfolds, but that's kind of how I'm approaching things early on here. So I'm more thinking the Twins might be really active in the trade market. And I don't think that a lot of people really grasp how, in my opinion, pretty aggressive Derek Falvey's been on the trade market. You know, they traded away Jorge Polanco. They traded away Luis Arraez. They traded away Josh Donaldson, who was at one point their marquee signing at that point. They traded away Chase Petty, who had been their most recent first-round draft pick that offseason to get Sonny Gray, of course. I can envision Derek Falvey being a little bit more aggressive in the trade market this offseason, and some of these conversations we're about to have kind of feeds into that, in my opinion. So first, let's kind of kick this off by just showing you the 40-man roster situation. There are 47 players currently on the Twins 40-man roster. How is that possible? Well, guys on the 60-day injured list do not count against that number of 40. So that is how they are so far over at the moment. But as soon as the World Series ends, essentially, the 60-day injured list is gone. There is no 60-day injured list in the offseason. These are the guys listed on the 60-day IL at the moment. All of those guys are going to come off the 60-day IL and increase the Twins' 40-man roster from 40 to 47. However, also when the World Series ends, the Twins' free agents are no longer on the roster. That's Max Kepler, Carlos Santana, Caleb Thielbar, and Anthony DeSclafani. So now without those four, we're going back down from 47 to 43, getting closer here. And of course, we want to make room for additions. We've got to get below 40. The next decision they have, as you saw on the calendar there, were decisions on options. Manuel Margot and Kyle Farmer each have a mutual option. That means both the team and the player have to elect to exercise that option. I don't think either of those are going to happen. Manuel Margot definitely is not going to have that option picked up. Now, the only reason why I leave room for a possibility with Kyle Farmer is I didn't think there was any way he was going to be on the 2024 Twins. So I don't think that option is going to get picked up, especially given the Twins' financial situation. But I was pretty shocked last year at what happened with Kyle Farmer, so I'm not going to completely assume. But if both of those options are declined, that would bring the Twins from 43 down to 41, so we're still over on the 40-man roster. I just want to call out down there at the bottom, you see Jorge Alcala also has an option. We'll get to that in just a sec here. In addition to all these guys coming off of the 40-man roster, you saw on that timeline that there is a deadline in mid-November to where you have to add prospects to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. And the lock is Marco Raya. You have to put Marco Raya on the 40-man roster. Some of these other guys we can have conversations about, but Marco Raya is definitely getting added to the 40-man roster to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. I think they would also probably like to keep Ricardo Olivar and Kalai Rosario, add those guys onto the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. However, Ricardo Olivar, he was eligible for the Rule 5 draft last year, wasn't protected, obviously. Maybe the Twins just don't think he'll get picked, and I think maybe that's a fairly safe assumption. This is a catcher/left field prospect who made it up to Wichita this year. Kalai Rosario, maybe kind of a more known prospect, Midwest League MVP 2 seasons ago now. Kind of missed time with Wichita. Unfortunately, this year he's playing in the AFL again, was the AFL Home Run Derby champion 2 years ago. So Kalai Rosario, a really young guy in that same draft class as Marco Raya as a high school guy. I don't know that either of those two are all that likely to get selected in the Rule 5 draft if you leave them unprotected. So they're kind of on the fence. I think the Twins would really be sad if they lost them, but I don't know that they're all that likely to get picked in the Rule 5 draft. And a team, in addition to that, once you're taken in the Rule 5 draft, team has to carry you the entire season on their active roster. I would like to find room to add those two guys. I'm sure the Twins would like to find room to add those two guys, but it's not absolutely necessary like it was with Marco Raya. Marco Raya would get picked. Absolutely. Some of these other arms, it's going to be interesting to see what the Twins think about these guys. A couple of left-handed pitchers that I threw on there, Jaylen Nowlin and Christian MacLeod. Currently prospects in the minor league system, spent most of their time with Wichita. Jaylen Nowlin did get up to St. Paul, and actually I think MacLeod did too. And really the thing that kind of stands out is also that they're left-handed. This organization, you saw there, Caleb Thielbar a free agent. This organization is really light on left-handed relief pitching. Both of those guys primarily started this year, but the path probably isn't there for them to be big league starters. But you stick them in the bullpen and see what they can do. They could be interesting. Kind of similar to Brent Hedrick, who was a surprise add to me. A couple of years ago when they added him to the 40-man roster in this situation to protect him from the Rule 5 draft, he was really not super on my radar as a guy I thought they would do that with, and they did. So I think both Nowlin and MacLeod could end up in that situation. Also, Travis Adams and Pierson Ohl. Travis Adams, another guy that made it up to AAA. Pierson Ohl, a guy who really had a breakout year a couple of years ago, and then this past season really fell off, but kind of got back to being interesting again toward the end of the year, enough to sort of keep you him in the back of your mind. So I definitely don't think all four of those arms are getting added, but I think we could probably expect one of them to. Which one is anybody's best guess, really, I think. But just adding Raya would increase the 40-man. We got down to 41. That would jump it back up to 42. And obviously, if we add more of these guys, we're adding more guys to the 40-man roster. So we potentially have to clear out, if we're going to keep Raya, Olivar, Rosario, and maybe one of those arms, let's say, you'd need to cut 5 guys off of the current 40-man roster. So who are the likely cuts? It's not as if we can look at the 40-man roster and you're just like, oh, I can't find anybody I would be willing to part with, because there are some guys, especially that came up toward the end of the year with so many injuries. Again, all those guys on the injured list. I think a lot of these names are kind of a little in trouble, to be honest, in terms of getting removed from the 40-man roster, getting designated for assignment. Michael Hellman, the only position player I have on there. It's just a crowded position player group. Hellman's 28 now. He's been good in AAA, a very versatile guy. And, that would be kind of a good story for him almost to get out of here. Because I think if he found a job with another team, I think he could find some more opportunities in the big leagues than he can here right now. Randy Dobnak, who is still under contract. So if you take him off the 40-man roster, he would clear waivers more than likely and still be in the org. Daniel Duarte, and then Michael Tonkin, Scott Blewett, Ronnie Henriquez, and Josh Winder, I highlighted they're all out of options. That means if you keep those guys, you have to put them on your major league roster, or else they're going to have to clear waivers. Would those guys clear waivers? Probably. Kind of all depends on how injured the rest of the league is at the given time that you're taking them off. So minimum of 2 of these guys need to get cut just to fit Raya on the 40-man. And then it's likely they'll protect more than him. And then also you want to create some room for off-season additions. You don't necessarily have to proactively do that, but we usually see the Twins proactively trim down their 40-man roster to leave space for signings or trades or whatever. There's also the possibility that the Twins non-tender some guys. Highlighted in that list was the non-tender deadline. This is the list of projected arbitration salaries. Mentioned that Jorge Alcala, the Twins have a $1.5 million option on him with a $55,000 buyout, but he's also arbitration eligible the next 2 years, and he's projected as a $1.7 million arbitration salary. So I would think the Twins will probably pick up that option, but it's hard to know what they feel about Jorge Alcala, because they've just been really weird with him in terms of kind of treating him as a spare piece when he showed signs of being something more than that. So it's certainly possible somebody gets non-tendered among this list. Obviously, the majority of these guys are locks. There's been some talk about Willi Castro potentially getting non-tendered. I think that would be silly. Maybe more likely that he'd be traded but I think that would be kind of silly as well. There's been some talk of Alex Kirilloff possibly getting non-tendered. I think at $1.8 million, that's such a modest projected salary for him that I would not go there personally. But, on the other hand, Alex really hasn't done a whole lot to, prove that he's worth a major league roster spot, to be super blunt about it. He's been really inconsistent. He's been really injured. So I get why the conversations go there, but that's just kind of the list of guys if you were curious on, and I don't think there's a real obvious non-tender here, to be honest. Looking ahead at next year, and the reason why I'm doing this is to illustrate that, once again, you're not going to have many guys coming off of the roster next year. Willi Castro, assuming he's on the team this coming year, Christian Vasquez and Chris Paddock. Of course, the Twins would love to get out of those contracts, but I think that's going to be very difficult for them to do. And then Randy Dobnak, who's not even on the 40-man roster in our little simulation that we're doing here, where we're removing him off the 40-man. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. And then I wanted to list, too, the guys who are going to be Rule 5 draft eligible toward this time next year. So these guys are not Rule 5 eligible this offseason. It would be next offseason. You have to find room for all those guys, or trade them, or trade guys in front of them, or whatever. So this organization, I think there's kind of two takeaways we can take away here. Most of the nucleus of this team is not only going to be around in 2025, but it's also looks to be around in 2026. So the Twins' foundation is really secure for the next 2 seasons. Now, at one point, like at this time a year ago, that was like, oh, yes, look at this team that went out and won a playoff series, and look at all this consistency on the roster they're going to have. No, there's hardly anybody that's going to be leaving the next few years. Well, now 2024 has painted that a little bit differently, of course, with the collapse. Now it's kind of easy to look at the roster and say, well, maybe they should shake some things up. So there are not a lot of instances where jobs are going to be opening up for guys coming through the minor league system. And this minor league system is going to continue to produce major league talent. Roster crunch maybe is taking it a little too far, but I would say the Twins are in a really good position to trade away some players, and they have other guys coming up. And this is, again, we haven't even really talked about adding guys. So this is not even to talk about players they might add in free agency, players they might trade for. We'll do a deeper dive like this into the payroll before too long. But I wanted to get to these early offseason decisions first, because that's really what drives the activity early on here. All of these 40-man roster considerations, all of these arbitration considerations. And once we get past this, it'll happen fast too. Once we get past this, we'll talk free agency, we'll talk trades. The offseason really slows down, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that stuff. So anyway, thanks for checking this one out. Thanks for hanging out with me for a while. Let me know what you think. Let me know kind of if any pathways open up for you, or kind of things that you think the Twins might be doing here in the next couple of months. And we'll talk again soon.